Hello, welcome back to another drive time feature for Avid Golfer magazine. This will be in the September issue. And let me introduce to you the 2018 Porsche Macan. SUVs are all the rage these days. Porsche is no different. They have the Cayenne. And now the Macan. Macan is the #1 seller in the Porsche chain. And I think you'll know why when we go through the details. Let's take a closer look. All right, this is the 2018 Porsche Macan. This is the base version. They have 4 different levels. They have an S, they have a GTS, and they have a turbo. The base unit is a 4-cylinder, 252 horsepower. More than enough for a car of this size. I mean, you put it in sport and it can flat out go. But I'm kind of intrigued about 340 horsepower in the V6, and then the 360 horsepower all the way up to the 400 horsepower. I can't imagine what that's like, and hopefully someday I'll get to test that out. Now, it's all-wheel drive. It's rear-wheel bias, but you can see when we'll show the inside, they have a little torque meter. You can see where the power is going from the front and the rear. When I was driving it in the rain, it was impeccable. There's something about all-wheel drive that gives you so much more confidence when you're in inclement weather. Now, this car is smaller, it's nimble, the storage space is maybe not as good as some of the other ones, but when you're a Porsche driver, you don't really care. It's all about the drive itself. These have the base 19-inch wheels. They look smaller than you normally would think of because they're not low-profile tires. They haven't had me messed up. I thought they were 18 inches, and I'm a big wheel guy. So that's what that is. Going to go all the way up to 20s, and obviously, the bigger the rims, the more attractive they are, but also probably the rougher the ride because of less rubber surrounding it. Go around to the front. So they have the trim on the side. Side view mirrors, they automatically go in when you want them to with a little button. And if you come all the way out to the rear, it's a dual exhaust, which I always love. Here's a crazy feature about the Porsche Macan. It took me a second to find where the trunk latch was. Right here. And as you can see, pretty decent storage room. When I put in my clubs, and they're a full set of clubs, full driver and everything, it goes in perfectly diagonally. If you need to get more clubs in, you probably have to drop down the seats. But again, you have that option, and that's what I love about these little crossovers these days, because you can make them as tight or as big as you want as far as the storage goes. Okay, we've seen the exterior. Let's see what's on the inside. All the tech, all the gizmos, and the seats, and everything else that Porsche provides for the Macan. All right, one of the first things I check when I get inside a car is immediately how comfortable are the seats, how does the steering wheel feel, how's everything laid out, does anything scream, uh-oh. Get in the Macan, there's really none of that. The seats are really comfortable. These are the 1 grade up seats, so they're ventilated and heated, so it covers you whether you're sweating or you're freezing, which is always a good thing. You can also get a heated steering wheel. The steering wheel itself, all wrapped in leather, and it's a really good tactile feel to it, so it feels really nice in your mitts, and I like that a lot. It has a lot of tech to it, even in the base version. As you can check here, all these buttons on the console go to something, and they're relevant. I like the fact that buttons are coming back because it's easier to find. You're not scrolling through a bunch of different menus, and you can see there's 4 more here on each side that aren't being used yet. So this thing could almost look like the inside of a 747 by the time you're all done with it. But again, it's really laid out nicely, and I appreciate the design on it. The screen is all touch screen. There is no way to use a control knob or anything in some of the other imports. Everything is by touch. Now, one thing that's good about it is it's a matte finish. One of the poor designs about any touch screen is it's a glossy finish, and all you do is see fingerprints, and drives guys like me crazy. So Porsche, knowing their drivers are kind of like me, very picky about certain things, they did this the right way. And you can scroll through the different stations, you can store them, you have presets, and that works out really well. On the instrumentation over here, you can see they have a digital speedometer, I think is always key. They do not have a head-up display. I find that a little curious, but again, that's a decision by Porsche. They figure that drivers don't want it and don't need it. Over here, you have a little thumb wheel. As you see right here, they have different settings for the car, whether it's water temp, oil temp, and how much oil is left in it. You can see right here, here's a torque. If I was driving, you'd see the torque split. It's, again, in the rear, it's more rear wheel dominant, but when need be, those front wheels come into play really fast. Like I was saying, when I was driving in the rain, it was impeccable. Gives you the tire pressure, how long you've been driving the car. It gives you nav, if I was on the phone, the time, what station I'm listening to, and that kind of thing. So it's all really good. It's very well laid out. One of the quirks about a Porsche is you have a key that you cannot remove. It's like a permanent key fob, and it's always on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. Not sure why that is, but that's the way it is. By the way, a little trivia about Macan. Macan in Indonesia means tiger. Not sure what that means, but when you start driving it, you do hear a roar and you do feel pretty exhilarated as you're tooling around in this thing. The storage is okay. It's a smaller crossover SUV, so you have decent amount of storage in the doors, decent amount of storage in the cubby hole. You have 2 cup holders, you have a couple more in the back. This is not your full-fledged Cayenne or another SUV. This is more for guys that probably drive more or less by themselves, but they needed some extra room just because it's a little more practical than a 911 or another 2-seater that Porsche provides. Other than that, the air works terrific. When it's been really hot out here in Dallas, when you put it on, the air conditioner, put it on auto, it's immediate. I tried the heated seats the other day. My back was a little stiff from playing golf, and those warm up in really quick fashion. And you can sync up the 2 sides of the car for temperature. I like things colder than my wife, so it works out well that there's a split there. And there's an off-road button here, so you can take this. It raises it maybe just a smidge, but the clearance isn't. You're not going to be going 4-wheeling a lot. Maybe going over a curb or something, but off-road is still there for you. You have lane departure warning. You have the auto stop, which is a love-hate relationship with most people, because growing up back in the day, you didn't want to start and stop your car all that often. You thought it would ruin the ignition, the igniter. But with this, you can also turn it off, which is what I do, because I'm just one of those guys. You can also put it in sport, so it revs up the RPMs a little bit. The gear shifting's a little bit quicker, comes off the line a little bit better, and kind of feels like the suspension is a little bit tighter. This is a base model, so it doesn't have the adaptive suspension. For some reason, I feel like it's a little bit tighter when I'm going over bumps and all that. Again, everybody has a preference, and mine tends to be in sport almost all the time. I just like to have that engaging type of setup. It has a double pane panoramic roof. If you want to do that, it goes all the way in the back, so it gives you a lot of light to if you're into that. If you're taking passengers that are sensitive to the sun, you can close it up as well. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It's one of the few cars that it's very intuitive. I get in a car, I don't like reading manuals or anything, because I want to see if I can figure stuff out on my own. And with this car, it was very much the case. You have a tilt steering wheel setting over here. One thing that is interesting, and I didn't know this until I got on YouTube and checked it out myself, was you have 2 memory settings for your driver's side and your passenger side. What's interesting though is it doesn't save it until you hit set And there's the bottom button here is for your key fob. It goes to key fobs more than the driver, which I found really interesting. But once you knew it, you know how to do it, and then every time you get back in your car, it goes back to your original settings, and again, saves you time and probably a little less aggravation. The stereo system is very good, and again, this is the Bose version, has surround sound, and it has presets. Again, you can scroll through here, it gives you up to 15 presets, more than enough, and you can go across radio formats, which I love. One thing that drives me a little crazy is you have it change the format before you can go to the presets of that, whether it's satellite, AM, FM, whatever. This is the way it should be done, and Porsche did a really nice job with that. Again, the seats very comfortable, have multiple lumbar supports. You can upgrade them to like a 20 power adjustable seats. I don't know if you need that many. Some people like the best of everything and the highest of everything. I'll turn down Journey. And whether you're sitting as a passenger or you're sitting in the rear seat, it's pretty comfortable. Again, the storage is a little light. If you're carrying 4 people, you better have really small suitcases or just a day, just like a backpack, when you're traveling around. This is a sport utility crossover. This is something different than a 3-rower or something like that where you're taking, you know, 7 to 8 people in it. Again, sight lines are pretty good. You have lane departure warnings, you can get blind side warnings, and when you look back, the only thing that is funny, if you look at this rear view mirror, it's a little small for my taste. They kind of cut it off down the sides there. Now the rear window isn't that big to begin with, but for some reason I find this an interesting design rather than just making it square so you get more of the total view that would be possible. It's got an analog clock. Almost every upper end import has that. I think it's a cool look. And you have a place here for your CD player. Not sure if anybody uses CD players anymore, but car manufacturers are still throwing that in there. And you can get Apple Play, you can get Android Autoplay if you want to sync up your iPhone to the screen. I tend not to use that. I tend to just use my phone separate from the car. But again, some people like everything integrated, and why not? I think that's about it. Let's take it for a drive, because that's where any Porsche really shines. So first of all, you notice it's a really nice solid ride. There's no creaking, there's no squeaking. Porsche knows how to put together a car the right way. Brakes are pretty good. Again, you can upgrade everything on this car since this is the base model, but I find the base model more than enough for me, especially at the price point. It starts at 48, this one's at about 60 grand. Not too shabby. Going over a speed bump, not too bad. You know, nothing rattles, kind of like it. Has great acceleration. Again, it's a 252 horsepower turbo 4. You can go up to the 6 that adds, you can go up to 340 horsepower, 360 horsepower, and then if you're really like living on the limit, or I can sit here and wait forever for this guy to turn. Sorry, type A personality when I drive. All right, let's get this thing on the road and see how it goes. The handling, very tight. That's really good. Did I mess you up there? Logan, my videographer. I think I just slammed into the side of the car. Again, the blind spot's pretty good. Most crossovers suffer from too big they call a C-pillar that separates the front and back doors, and these are fairly thick for stability and for integrity of the frame, but not too shabby, and they have big enough side view mirrors that you can pretty much see whatever you need to. If I put this thing in sport, you'll see it does kick up the RPMs a little bit. Again, I don't know if it stiffens up the ride. It kind of feels like it to me, but it's more than adequate, and it just gives you enough of a pop that if you want to have some fun, tool around maybe after a day at the office, you want to blow it out a little bit, this is one way to do it. One thing I'll say about Porsche is when you want to drive, this will give you all the smiles you'll ever want. It's a cliche, but it's miles of smiles when it comes to a ride like this. But this is a fun driving car. I've really enjoyed it. I've had it for about 4 or 5 days, and I put it through every pace I can, and it never feels like it's working too hard, even though it's a 4-cylinder. It just seems right at home, and the harder you drive it, I think the better it feels. So big thumbs up for that. So again, big thumbs up to not only the brand, but this model. Again, you can see why it sells so well. All right, so there you go. This is the 2018 Porsche Macan, their little crossover. It's their #1 seller in the brand. I want to thank a Park Place Porsche of Grapevine for supplying the car. You can also test drive this not only at the Grapevine store, but Park Place Porsche on Lemon in Dallas. The base car here starts at $48,700. Pretty good price. Now I have a couple packages on here that lift it up to 60 grand. That's still pretty reasonable given the category. You can take this thing all the way up to just a tick under 6 fig. But at the price point right now, it's one heck of a value. So be sure to look for this in the upcoming September edition of Avid Golfer magazine. Until next time, safe driving.